Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. I'm your host, delonewolf, and maybe before we get started, a quick word on the fuel block market. I definitely want to thank all of you guys for all the responses on that video. A lot of it was very interesting, and if I recap a little bit, most of the vibes that I got is that when people look at their own ice belts, especially in nullsec, there is still a lot of potential ice supply out there. So if we were close to that bottleneck, people would just start ice mining a lot of that. So we're definitely not near that potential bottleneck, which does exist, but it's purely theoretical, of course. And there's just enough ice out there that supply could still grow substantially from that standpoint. Another thing that was noted is that the volumes have not really increased all that much when it comes to fuel consumption or fuel demand. And as a result, the most likely explanation for the across-the-board increase in price is maybe a combination of speculation, of course, market forces, and some possible directed ganking efforts towards some of the ice miners that may have disrupted the flow of fuel a little bit. But overall, I guess most people expect things to get back to normal after a little while. I think that they're probably right, but we do, I think, have to keep an eye on the fuel market. It could even become pretty interesting if it does get speculated on more and more often, because you can potentially make a little money on the right trades in there as well. Another thing that was noted is that the margins are razor thin at the moment when it comes to producing fuel blocks. That is probably because of the high PI prices, and that is, I don't think that we'll ever run into problems, into actual problems from that perspective. You know, coolants, mechanical parts, stuff like that. You know, you can just switch out your planets and make more of those if the price difference becomes worth it. So I also think that that will stabilize. The potential, I think, first theory that would get hit would of course be the lack of supply of ice. But as has been noted, there's still a lot of ice out there that remains untouched every week, especially in nullsec. So yeah, if it ever comes to that, there is still a lot of room for ice mining to grow in New Eden at the moment. So let's keep an eye on the fuel blocks, but let's not panic just yet. Moving on to the EVE Talk for this week, of course, we will start as always with plex, and I should really get my notes ready. At 3 minutes, a little bit later than normal, but alright. And this one, a lot of people are starting to expect CSM leaks or something like that. So plex are obviously going up quite substantially, up to 1,150,000,000 for 1,150,000,000 for the sellers, 1,090,000,000 for the buyers. And the reason people are expecting or are suspecting some sort of CSM leaking is because, of course, the price increased before or started increasing substantially before CCP announced the fact that they are somewhat planning to divide plex basically into 500 individual units, get rid of Aurum, and yeah, try to convert plex into a smaller currency basically, so that they can then provide different services for plex and probably also do discounts on plex directly. Basically, I think the main goal, which to me makes a lot of sense, is to get rid of Aurum, get rid of the third currency that exists in EVE Online. I never really understood why they, well, I sort of understood why they did that. You know, they could, of course, give discounts and things like that in Aurum if they wanted to, but they're going to try and move all of that to plex, which to me makes a lot of sense. You know, a sandbox economy doesn't need dozens of different currencies. We have ISK, which you can make in game. We have plex, which you can purchase from CCP. There's a balance between those two, and if you want to give some discounts, then do that straight to the plex market. I think that that would make a lot of sense, and this opens up potentially the door for a lot of new services. I liked the Reddit thread about all of this to see what kind of services CCP could try to monetize with the smaller plex, and could of course also try to give discounts on. One that was immediately noted is also one that I suspected could be coming when the alpha clones were first announced. It would be some form of beta clones or delta clones. Beta, for instance, could be give access to 2 races in alpha clone skills for you to train. So once you're done with Galente, you also want to explore Minmatar. Well, there you go. Just purchase beta clone, and you can start training the next 5 million skill points for another race of your choice. Delta could be, for instance, for all races, and then they could up to battleships, for instance, you know, just anything except capitals. And then the Omega clones would get to use capitals, super capitals, and all of the skills available in game. I think that it will make sense, especially from a business perspective, to give players more options, also smaller options than the full $15 a month, the full subscription. But stuff in between, I think, will make a lot of sense, and is probably on our way. And it is probably the #1 reason why CCP is planning to basically turn plex, one plex at the moment, into 500 microplex, you could call them, or something like that. And yeah, it just makes a lot of business sense. I don't think that this is meant to have any impact on the plex price itself, which is maybe the reason why here in the last few days we're actually seeing a bit of a fallback in the average prices. I don't think that this will last very long, especially because there is already a lot of pressure. To the one controversial aspect of what's been announced so far is that any leftover balances in Orm of less than 1,000 Orm might just get taken away by CCP, but I think that there's a lot of pushback, and there will be some sort of compensation in the end. The most likely one would be that they would, for instance, add a little bit of game time, give you a bit of Omega game time or something like that, equivalent to that tiny balance that you have left. But other than that, I think that most people agree getting rid of the third currency in EVE Online only makes a lot of sense. And if they can find an equitable solution for the leftover Orm, overall the supply of the real market goods, basically, which is this entire skill plex category that I check here, should remain pretty much untouched. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting, and we're definitely going to keep a close eye on all of this. From my perspective then, if you're looking for a sell opportunity, you have a slight sell opportunity here. It's not the 1.2 billion that I'm personally looking at, but for plexes that I've purchased here throughout the summer, when we were pretty low at 900 million, this is a decent amount of profit that you can take already. Of course, mine have been mostly purchases made here to make up for a lot of plexes that I bought at 1.2 billion, so it's definitely not perfect. But yeah, theoretically 1.15 billion is definitely not bad and on the higher side of things. So it's all up to you to decide what you want to do with this. Oh, before we go to the multiple trading certificates, maybe we should take a quick look at what's happening in perimeter, because that has a substantial plex market as well. That's down to 1,126 million for the sellers, and on the buyer side they go up to 1,090,000, which is pretty much in line actually with Jita. Well, a little bit higher than Jita itself. So you get a decent discount between Jita of around 24 million ISK. But again, personally, I only would use these if I'm planning to just use the plexes themselves. Oh, there is actually a second controversial thing when it comes to the announced plans, is that you will then always be able to move your plex into a separate... Whoops, god damn it, what am I doing? It's this that I need to grab, into a separate inventory tab. So basically underneath here there would be like a plex inventory tab. This does of course mean that there would now be 100% safe ways of moving your plex to different places. This means no more destruction, no more juicy kill mails, but just from, I guess, a a business customer standpoint, I think that makes a lot of sense. The choice to make plex destroyable has been one that's been cheered by the hardcore players that want to see destruction in big value numbers and things like that. But just from a business perspective, a real life business perspective, just allowing people that don't really know what they're doing to spend real money on plex, undock with that, and then lose all of that in a matter of seconds. Yeah, it's not exactly the kind of service that I think a business wants to see happen all too often, and allowing people basically to do what they want with plex, which they've normally, at least someone will have purchased that with real money at some point. I think that I understand it's a little bit controversial, but I guess from a real life business perspective, I understand that making plex invulnerable is something that makes a lot of sense. It's against the absolute most hardcore sandbox rules that a lot of people do adhere to when it comes to EVE Online, make everything part of the sandbox, but we are definitely talking about the one item in EVE Online that is basically real life cash, that is the conversion to real life cash, and yeah, putting that in a separate tab so that it cannot be destroyed sort of makes sense to me, and I'm not exactly opposed to that. If we start making other tabs for other stuff like maybe skins or things like that, then we are going to start having a problem. But for this one exception, plex, which is of course also CCP's way of combating RMT, I'm basically okay with it. So next up, we've got multiple pilot training certificates up to 1,150,000 as well, or is, yeah, 1,150,000 as well. You can see it's only one of them, then it's 1,170,000, and here again very sharp increase in price, but at this current price range you can see that the median daily prices are hesitating a little bit. I would not be surprised that after analyzing what happens, and if CCP announces something for the leftover Aurum to make sure that basically everything that's in the game comes back into the game, that we'll see this go back down actually. Next up, the pilot body resculpt actually going up in price quite sharply as well. So are these leaks? Is this pure speculation on something happening? Maybe the leak that may have happened is that like a CSM at some point dropped somewhere. Well, CCP is planning to do some changes to the plex system, and then a couple of people went wild. Is that a leak that's actionable? Not necessarily, but people were willing to take the risk from that perspective. So I think that's the most likely event that happened, is that somehow it just got out that something about plex might change without any actual details. But who knows, of course, all of that is looking into a crystal ball. Here are the skill extractors. Those follow suit as well, of course. What you can clearly see here is the fallback already of the median daily prices. Sellers are up to 266.6 million, buyers are at 253 million. Fresh supply is starting to come in quite decently, more than a full front page right here. And I think the interesting one could be the skill injectors that are falling back in price a little bit. Quite interesting. After a sharp increase in price, we're heading back for 650 million. 671 for the sellers, 636 for the buyers. The fact that the median daily prices are right in between here, I think, is an indication that we're starting to have some action on both sides. So there is some selling straight up to the buy orders, and a decent amount of competition on the seller side of things. The one thing to note, of course, is the massive difference in volumes here. Most of them here are above 10, 20, and then 40, 43 as the latest orders. Skill injectors, yeah, most of them are below 10 in volumes. There are some exceptions, of course. 39, 24, and 35 are quite decent, but it means that there are a lot of skill extractors coming into the market. I would actually suspect that so I think you buy skill extractors with Aurum so that people will just to be safe, just to get that value out of it, purchase more skill extractors. We could see a bit of an oversupply and there's a serious correction in skill extractors because of the announced changes here. But skill injectors also, of course, require something like a skill point pool or a character that is farming skill points or something like that. And as a result, there is this bit of a discrepancy between the action of these two items. items, which makes skill injectors in my book very interesting, especially if plex become microplex, and so you have 500 for one. I mean, it's still going to be probably a really good inflation edge or hedge, but I suspect that skill injectors, because of that SP count, could actually become the store of value of choice. It doesn't have the advantage that plex will then have, that you can move it without costs, but it has this added element that you need those skill point farms in there, you need that effort in there as well, which makes it, I think, a bit more ripe for speculation, and I think a bit more interesting when it comes to investing in something rather than plex. I think it could definitely take this over, which to me would seem pretty interesting. It could definitely change the outlook of ETH Talk substantially. We will see how all of that plays out, of course. Could be quite interesting. Interesting time ahead in the plex market is, I think, what I would say. Next up, we have some minerals. 1535. Let's take a look at that. Very interesting to me here. We can see that titanium is coming back a little bit. You could also have seen that from the bottom ticker. The sellers are back up to 446 and the buyers at 428. I purchased a few extra stocks of 100 million, batches of around 100 million at like 385, 390, stuff like that. So there's already a little bit of profit in it. What should be noted here is 1.4, 1 billion, 1.2 billion. This is a pretty substantial supply still coming in. The most likely explanation is that with the Rorcal mining that has been nerfed, that doesn't mean that supply is set to decrease right away. There are still massive stocks out there that people will want to sell at the best possible price, and so we can expect to be at a decently oversupplied situation for a while yet. But the buyers are coming to the market as well after the Rorcal nerf here. Two buyers of 1 billion and 1.7 billion coming in is going to make this a pretty interesting market, I think. But I also think that the most likely thing is basically that we're going to go back towards a more normal price for these goods, and that the best buying opportunities are basically over already. Next up here we've got pyrites. Let's take a look at that chart. Hesitating a little bit, but here at the tail end we can see that the 5-day moving average and the 20-day moving average are now going up in tandem a little bit. So it looks like, except if we make exception of this one seller at 575, we're up to 630 and the buyers are at 573. So I think that basically the bottom is forming. Are we seeing some massive supply here? 200 million, 500 million here, 400 million here. It is still quite substantial, and people are waiting it out a little bit in the pyrite market because not that many orders are from the last 24 hours. But we all know just from what's happening in titanium that there are still some substantial stocks out there waiting to come to the market at a better price. And so we could be in for, as I've said, a little bit of volatility, but a slow increase in price towards what we would have considered more normal prices in the past. What could be interesting is, of course, Mexalon, and it is quite interesting because that's been spotted as being basically the bottleneck in nullsec mining. So the reason why Mexalon has been able to stay this high is because if they were emptying out entire belts in record time with the massive yield of Rorcal, so basically they would put in entire Rorcal fleets, empty belts in a matter of just a few drone mining cycles, move on to the next one because they have upgraded space so it keeps respawning, and they found out that Mexalon is the really hard bottleneck there. You just don't mine enough Mexalon no matter what you do, and you end up with a lot of extra titanium, pyrite, isogen and stuff like that. And as a result now though, if they still want to manufacture at the current rates, they need more Mexalon, and so we get these median daily prices heading towards 80 ISK. The sellers are at 78.9 and the buyers are at 74.55, and so this is very interesting to me. It does mean that if you do mining in HiSec and you basically have a bit of a choice, like in Detail for instance, you have plenty of belts, they don't get mined out every day. As a result, the best idea is of course to prioritize ores that have mixalon in it, or a high degree of mixalon in it. It's gonna be a lot better than stuff like tritanium or feldspar for tritanium, for instance. So yeah, try to focus on that Pyroclase and other ores that have mixalon in it, because it is the nullsec bottleneck. If anything is going to be imported into nullsec, it is going to be mixalon. That's very important to keep in mind if you want to get the most ISK per hour out of your high-sec mining, and you have that choice, go for the mixalon sources. Until of course CCP decides to change something, that's also something to keep an eye on. Which I will do, of course. Here is Isogen next. You can also see here finally a bit of a comeback, 5-day moving average going up, and lowest price right here, average price 42 ISK. Currently sellers are at 58.45, buyers are at 51.84, and we can clearly see that the bottom has been forming, and that the Rorqual nerfs have not remained without impact on the market. But again, keep the major stocks in mind. Those are still heading for the market as well. And well, we jumped pretty high in just one page from 65 to 58. The numbers here, we've got one of 36 million, but we don't have that many fresh orders. 22 and 40 million will probably slow things down a little bit, but I think that we could jump up towards 60-65 quite quickly. At that point, of course, we will see some of those stocks get dumped on the market, will come back. So we are set for a little bit of volatility, and in my opinion, of course, an increase in price over a longer period. Next up, we've got Noxium. Yep, definitely breaking out as well. Bottom median daily price less than 300 ISK, currently selling for 365. Buyers are at 342. I actually bought a bit of Noxium at these very low prices as well, close to 300 ISK. So there was definitely some short-term money to be made there. I personally think that the best thing to do is to have a little bit of patience when it comes to the mineral market. Next up, we've got Zytrine for nullsec, selling for 1000 ISK. Buyers are at 995, very close margin. Interestingly enough, still 2.7 million and 1.5 million coming to the market here as well. So Zytrine is clearly under pressure a little bit. At the moment, it's not doing all that well. Zytrine at 1000 ISK, if you look at the entire chart, is actually decently cheap, but it might take a little bit of action for this to actually come back up. So it's quite surprising to see Zytrine in this decently cheap position here. Compare that to Megasite, which is still doing quite well, slowly going down, and this is actually the pattern, as I've said, that I'm expecting in the high-sec minerals, but the reverse. You can see that Megasite is slowly going down, but in a rather erratic way, with some bottoms and then going back up substantially, back up to 1600, going back down here a little bit lower to 3060, then back up to 1477 and back down here again. So I'm expecting the exact opposite to happen in the high-sec minerals. And Megasite here, of course, currently trading for 1423 ISK for the sellers, 1285 for the buyers, still 5 million and 1.5 million coming here. Decent amount here as well, though, with 1 million units. So this trend is set to continue, I think, because Zytrine is just not showing any sign that it's coming back. Basically, there is more supply than demand at the moment in these nullsec specific minerals, which is putting pressure on Megasite and is keeping Zytrine decently low and affordable. And finally, Morphite. If that's the story, it should be going down, and that seems to be the story, because we can see here Morphite going back down well below 10,000 ISK now. 10,000 for the sellers, but 9,000 for the buyers. That's quite a serious margin. So sellers still want that 10,000 ISK, but buyers, if you can pick it up for like 9,100, that's already a pretty wide spread compared to the sellers. Wait it out for the right time, if there would be a little bit more volatility in the mineral market, maybe a major war, something like that. And your purchases at the moment on the buyer side of things, I think, will make you a decent amount of money in a lot of these. In Zytrine could be the same, and you could still look for stuff like Isogen, Tritanium and Pyrite if you haven't done so already. To be honest, you're a little bit late, because that very bottom was formed right there, and I think I've said that, you know, look into this. It could be the right time to purchase. I definitely bought a couple of batches, not as much as, you know, in hindsight is always 2020 I could have or should have, but I definitely have a little bit of ISK in minerals that are right now already up in price, and in my opinion will go up in price substantially in the future as well, especially if we see a pretty big war. Hopefully we'll see that. Next up we've got some PI, and that's 24.55. Okay. Let's take a look at these. Here are construction blocks slowly giving back ground a little bit. Right now still staying a little bit above average, I think, when it comes to the price range. 13,800 for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers. Quite a wide margin here in the construction blocks. Fresh supply, not that much. 6-7 fresh sell orders, 30k and 12,000 units is decently sizable. A big buyer here at 427,000 is going to keep the price from completely crashing down. But keep in mind the margin is quite large here. And as a result, the construction blocks are under pressure from the big supply and the big gap between sellers and buyers. That needs to close a little bit. Consumer electronics next, taking off quite nicely. That is a surprise, man. I completely missed out on this one. January 10,000 is on average was your buy opportunity. I don't have any, sorry, I should have, because now 15,000 average price. 15,000 for the sellers, there's just not enough supply. 13,500 for the buyers, already making you a substantial profit in a matter of 2.5 months. Not bad at all. And a nice show of force, in my opinion, for PI. Really, there was quite a bit of pressure from people, just like up until the summer. I think I did not check PI regularly, but then I said, all right, I'm gonna make the category. Give me your favorite products. This is the list that I basically made up from suggestions from the players, and I'm absolutely loving this. This chart is alive in a way that also becomes decently predictable. You can notice clearly bottoms that are well below the average price at the bottom of the chart, but we can also see the volatility that exists in here, the meandering of activity, demand, supply. That seems to be very much happening in all of the materials that you guys have suggested to me. This can make you a lot of ISK, to be honest, and I'm quite surprised to see this PI market be so alive and be so full of potential, because here consumer electronics you could have made 50% profit in a matter of 2.5 months. I didn't really spot this as a buy opportunity, or I would have bought a lot of them, but I'm slowly starting to learn this market, and I'm very much liking it. I may actually start to make this a regular thing that I'll do myself as well. Coolants at the moment here, part of the PI materials needed for fuels, are coming back down a little bit from their high. Still average price of 14,000 ISK, 14,400 for the sellers, 14,000 for the buyers. Very interesting to see the buyer side of things be very close to the average price. I think that means that people are also just straight up selling to these buyers in pretty big numbers, and that the sellers are the one that need a lot of patience, which is not good news, of course, especially if the cheapest buyer comes in with 233,000 units. This is going to start to oversupply the market, and I think we will start to see coolants come back down. Do you see coolants close to 10,000 ISK on the buyer side of things, or below that? Definitely start picking that up if you look at this entire chart here. But one of the culprits as well, in all likeliness, for the high fuel prices is right here. Enriched uranium next, that one is not stopping. So 12.5k here. What was the average price here? Less than 12,000 ISK could be interesting for enriched uranium. Back up to 20,000 ISK. Look at how much ISK you could have made out of that. Pretty crazy. 20,000 for the sellers, 17,000 for the buyers. This again is also used in fuel, so this is not going to solve our fuel or higher fuel prices anytime soon, because this is clearly a one-year high. If you can make enriched uranium, bring that to the market right now. Look at how sharp the increase is. This is of course going to go back down, as some stocks will come alive after this, but yeah, it's the right time to make and bring enriched uranium to the market. Mechanical parts next, still holding strong at its one-year high. The one thing that's a little bit different between a lot of the other stuff that I check here is that we can have this evolution over the course of several months. So here, for instance, you have mechanical parts that had a weak summer, unlike most of the other PI materials, but then since December here started going up at a very steady rate, reaches a high point of more than 15,000 ISK, which for mechanical parts for a barren planet material is very good. And right now it is actually staying there. So you have this prolonged sell opportunity, 15,800 ISK for mechanical parts, 14,500 for buyers. That is right here, and all you need for that are a couple of barren planets, and you can start to really churn out mechanical parts. Not at a fantastic rate, of course, unless you can have access to wormhole space or some good Gnostic planets. But yeah, you can make well above average when it comes to these mechanical part productions, and that is quite interesting to me to see this slow evolution. This buy opportunity at less than 10,000 ISK was very pronounced throughout the entire summer. You could have tried to build up vast stocks during this period, and then now 6 months later you would have made, let's take a look at that, you could have bought for let's say 9k, 9k, even a little bit less than that, and currently we're looking to sell at almost double the price here. So yeah, the PI market, absolutely an awesome one. Oxygen is only a processed material. It is also tied to fuel blocks, so it is interesting to see it at a high point, definitely above average. But I'm not exactly sure if unless we see it again close to like 350, well below 400, if it's that easy to spot buy and sell opportunities in a processed material, because it is just a step less to make these. You can easily make a huge amount of oxygen and flood the market with that if you want to. Let's say that oxygen is not is high, but coolants are not. Well, you can just stop some of your coolant productions, go straight into the oxygen and just dump all of that to the market. So I think it's this one is a little bit more tricky, but it's important because it's related to fuels, of course, again at a high place, so not good for fuel producers. Robotics finally still holding on well above 100 ISK as well, which is also required in fuels, and 121,400 for the sellers, 117,500 for the buyers. Quite a substantial price. We do see that supply is picking up here, more than a full front page in the last 24 hours, but they're taking their time. Competition is only from like 122,000 to 121,475. So yeah, robotics staying strong at a high point. Rocket fuel next. After a little bit of hesitation, it is slowly giving ground a little bit here, selling for 14,300. Buyers are at 13,700, still a well above average price if you look at the rest of the chart. Quite interesting to see this at a high point as well, but the pressure is starting to work on rocket fuel, I think. Self-harmonizing power cores next, advanced PI material that you require for structures mostly. As we can see here, since the Ascension expansion, the slow and steady decline in price is maintaining itself, currently selling for 2 million. First batch is coming in at 2 million. This is actually quite a big jump down. If this sticks and if more supply keeps coming in, which with buyers at 1.8 million is definitely a possibility, we will continue to see this decrease in price here until we have some concrete information, of course, on the drilling rigs, I think. Superconductors next. Yeah, pretty sharp dive here. Average price in the last few days 12,000 ISK, which I would put at a little bit below average, maybe 12,500 for the sellers, 11,800 for the buyers. I would say here sellers are on the averages, buyers are a bit below average. If this has momentum, which it could have, we might be in for a buy opportunity at close to 10k for superconductors. Potential sell point 17,000, 15,000 is not out of the possibility. So if you're looking for that PI investment, I would start looking at superconductors. Probably not one that I'm going to buy myself unless we do see these buyers go below 10,000 ISK. The reason is I'm producing superconductors myself onto planets. It's decent amounts that I can stack up. I'm not going to sell at this price. I'm going to wait for a better sell opportunity since I check for those as well, but I don't think that I'm going to build extra stocks in these either. Test cultures next. Look at that, buyer 7,300 completely empty. This is a buy opportunity in my opinion, and look at the chart, awesome. Two sell opportunities at 15,000 ISK. We now have a clear buy opportunity to have that, try and pick some up 7,300 ISK. I'm definitely going to put in a buy order or two of test cultures here. Look at the chart, it's pretty awesome. So yeah, very, very nice. And finally we've got weight-aware mainframes. Also needed in structures, continued pressure on that, which is quite normal. Currently selling for 2.4 million. Buyers are at 2.2 million. We can also see that buy orders are slowly drying up. So as supply keeps coming in, which it does, almost a full front page here, a few thousand extra again on the market. This will continue to put slow pressure on the price. This is almost inevitable. But yeah, if you're looking for something to pour a bit of ISK in, look at the test cultures. I think this could be quite interesting. Of course, spike here in June, spike here in December. Ascension expansion could very much be tied to structures, but I think that considering the chart here, it is your time to look into some buy orders, to be honest. Now, after PI, we move on to Take One ships, 35. Okay. And here I think that we can basically just look for a bit of a bottom forming as well. If you look at the Apocalypse here, it's slowly trying to do so, but the lack of demand is always going to be a problem. So Apocalypse is selling for 155 million, bars are at 142 million. I think that supply will slowly dry up here and push the price up just a little bit, because of course you cannot produce apocalypses at a very cheap price if you're buying your minerals at the moment. But again, there are massive stocks of minerals out there. There are probably stocks of ships out there as well. All of this will be delayed a little bit, so look for bottom forming at the moment. Don't look for any massive surges in price just yet in the Tech 1 market. There just isn't the demand for that here, or unless all of a sudden maybe some Nullsec alliances are building up big fleets. That's a possibility, of course, but then we should see a big increase in volumes, of course. Here is the Arbitrator, up just a little bit as well in price, but again, nothing all too substantial. It's basically managing to stay just below its average of before the Ascension expansion and the Rorcal increase, but 8.5 million for the sellers, 7.2 for the buyers, and basically the lack of volumes on the market is right here, very visible in the Arbitrator. Next up we've got the Bellicose. Also, yeah, again here a bit of hesitation trying to form this bottom. No massive volumes, so it's not today that people have bought a lot of Bellicoses. 8.3 million for the sellers, 6.7 million for the buyers. Pretty massive gap between those two. Again, the lack of demand is pretty obvious right here. Supply, not all of that big either. Bit of bottom forming can be seen here. The Breacher next, only a frigate of course. Those are a bit less impacted by the mineral market, managing to stay decently stable. Supply 423,000 for the sellers. Buyers, not that many of them at 377,000. Definitely not something I would personally speculate on. Take one frigates. Here is the Brutix. Also you can see a bit of volatility trying to form a bottom here at 46 million. Sellers at 47. Buyers at 43.5. There is some supply in Brutixes, but the demand here again not all that great. There's not much else to say on the Tech 1 market except that, well, there will always be this delayed response between changes in the mineral markets and the Tech 1 production market. And if at the moment we are in this low demand for these ships situation, then we're just gonna have this delayed response, and at the moment we just have to wait for the bottom to form. Here's the Catalysts, also slowly forming a bottom, selling for more than 1 million at least. Buyers are at 915,000. Cormorant next, also slowly trying to go up, currently selling for 1.34 million, a little bit better than the Catalyst, probably because of this. The redesign, of course, it looks pretty cool, and that's why we're paying a little bit of a premium. There is a bit more demand as well, but we can also see, yeah, supply just isn't there just yet. I think it'll get plugged quite quickly, and keep in mind as well, 1.35 million is right here, just maybe on the average or a little bit above the average that we've been paying throughout the year. So it's not like this is a massive increase in price. It's actually a massive increase in price compared to the bottom prices of close to $1 million that we were having after the Ascension expansion. Crucifier next, that one keeps going down to really low prices, selling for 200,000. There's basically no buyers here at 180,000. Do you want to make some stocks of these and hope for a rebalance patch or something like that is going to make the Crucifier more attractive? Honestly, it's something that is so easily made, so quickly made, I wouldn't bother with that myself. The Drake next, still going for a 1-year low, so here we will need to see that bottom form, selling for 44.8 million. Buyers are at 39 million. You're buying Drakes from buyers at less than 40 million. Talk about cheap Drakes, poor guy. And yeah, 1-year low right here. Try and look for that bottom to be formed. Now that minerals are back up a little bit, Retriever is forming that bottom right now. You can see that we're shooting up just a little bit, but from what price point? 22 million for the sellers, 18 million for the buyers. This could actually, with average price of 18 and 19 million like 10 days ago, that would have been maybe the one right buy order to make. Why? Because the Rorcal nerf might bring back some interest in the Retriever longer term. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Retriever evolve back at least towards 25 million or something like that. Now that we know that the Rorcal nerf is a fact, of course, but we're already selling them at 22 million. So again, the margins were there when you could pick those up at less than 20 million. The Tempest next, also going back up a little bit, clearly trying to form a bottom here, currently selling for 165 million, not that bad. Buyers are at 154. Are we seeing a bit of a volume spike? Yep, right here. You can see that there was quite some purchasing when the price hit 130 million. I wouldn't be surprised if like at least 1 or 2 Tempest fleets were bought in nullsec or by nullsec alliances, because they are a battleship doctrine that does exist and is flown in nullsec. So yeah, the Tick 1 market, unfortunately there is not much to say. We'll have to wait on the mineral market to basically find its new normal, all of the stocks to get to be gone through the market, to have gone through the market, and that is, I think, when we'll start to get maybe hopefully an increase in demand in Tick 1 ships, and then as a result a more alive Tick 1 market. Next up, the Tick 2 market, 42 minutes. We'll check on this for some more volatility. Here is the Aries, not that bad. We actually saw an average price of 25 million with a bottom price of 21.8 million. Yeah, keeping the Tick 2 market alive in the small ships, at least for some speculation. So the hope, of course, is that if you see these buy orders go down towards 21, 22 million, that the average prices, I mean, that you can buy Aries close to 20 million, and as a result here on one of these increasing prices sell them for 25 million. That's where you make a bit of money, and we can see at least a little bit of volatility is showing up here. The Claw had a decent amount of volatility before, is now actually dropping and staying at close to 20 million, so the buyers should be well below that, less than 19 million. I bought 2 claws myself. I may buy a couple extra here as well, at like 19 million or something like that, so that I'm ready on the next increase in price. 25 to 30 million sounds like an interesting one. On some nullsec battle this could actually happen, so the Claw, possibly a good investment. Here is the Crow. Here again we can see the volatility from, let's say, 23 million up to 28 million, but at least it happens from time to time. Now we're back down here, 22.5 million, buyers 21.5 million. For your consideration, the lack of demand is clear, the oversupply is clear as well. You could look into some Crows. The Aries next, finally showing a little bit of volatility after going really low, surprisingly low here, but staying within this range. So I would still say you could try to pick up Aries at like 33 million, something like that. Definitely well below the entire chart, but we need something to happen in nullsec, a pretty big battle with interdictors lost, so that they need to be replaced in short order for this to become an investment. This is definitely not a short-term investment, which the Claw and the Aries and the Crows, they could be. The flycatcher next here, that was a lovely spike, to be honest. Went from 53 million to 75 million. That's where you make some money. Of course, at one point you have to be on your way down, so average price is down to 64 million. What was I looking at here? 51 million. Buyers still at 57, sellers at 64 million. You're still in sell order territory. But again, showing that the Tech 2 market can be alive for some speculation. Mid-February, buy them for 55 million. Now still sell them for more than 66. Not bad. Heretic next, also not too bad here. Mid-February with a bottom at 44 million. Currently still going up 55.4 million, 55.7. And then the buyers at 51 million. Not bad at all. Next up here we get the Hound flattening out, unfortunately, after a lovely double spike in December and January. But we would like to see buy orders for less than 18 million. 18.5 million, it's still not there. So it's not a surprise that this is actually stabilizing here, because unfortunately the buyers are still staying in the market at a slightly too high price, in my opinion, to allow for the volatility to come back. If these drop out and you can start at 17.5, 17.6 million, that is when we will also see massive oversupply in order to get into that situation. That is when you'll probably also see these spikes in volumes and thus that speculation. So unfortunately for the Hound, the buyers are a bit too eager and they're helping keep this a bit too stable. The Malediction next, a bit more volatility here, but are we working towards the 20 million on the buyer side of things? Still at 21.2, so I would say again too early to buy, too late to sell. Here's the Manticore next. That one is dropping off nicely here. Are we really 22.8? Let's take a look here. 22 million for the buyers, 23 million for the sellers. You know what, 22 million for the buyers right here. That is starting to be in interesting buy order territory. So you could look into the Manticore if you're looking for a Tech 2 ship to purchase. The Nemesis next, again, I think this is very similar to the Hound. We can see here bottoms 20 million should be possible. Buyers are still at 21, sellers at 22.9. So despite the fact that there are almost no buyers, those that do still want to pick up their Nemesis are, in my opinion, doing so at a slightly too high price. We need this to drop off back to the 20 million, then you've got this no-brain buy. Then you've got the option for this oversupply situation to actually become even worse. And you have the opportunity for a massive buy order for a big fleet to happen, and thus more volatility like this here. Unfortunately, yeah, the buyers are a bit too high in my opinion. The Manticore is the one exception. 22 million is well below the entire chart. Next up, we've got the Purifier here. Again, this is not where we want to sit. 19, yeah, less than 20 at least for the buy orders. Still at 20.4 million. Look at that, 88, 88, 89, 89. They're still competing right here. So we still need that to drop out, to be honest. Next, we've got the Saber. That's a bit of a better story if you're looking for that volatility. We would of course like to be able to buy them for less than 50 million. Is that happening? Yeah, 48.1 million. So I would say not bad. This is a pretty sharp drop off here and practically bringing you back a buy opportunity right now for the Saber. And so in the last 2 months you could have sold them twice for around 67 million. Right now you're buying them for 48. Definitely not bad at all. Tech 2 market still alive. Unfortunately, some of the stealth bombers are stabilizing because of some too high buy orders, in my opinion. Next up, Tech 3 market, 48.50. Right, I'm making back a little bit of time here to keep it under an hour. So here is the Confessor. After 27 million on sell order of things, I think we're back up to 29 million at least, 30 million actually, except for one of them. Will this be the end? I'm not exactly sure. 230, 64, 120, 120, those are still really massive numbers. We're still oversupplied. You could still look into buying some Confessors if you want to, I think. But of course, last week 27 million was extremely cheap. I took the opportunity to buy just a couple of extra. I'll give you that information. Here's the Hecate, 37.8 million. I bought some Hecates for like 30. Buy orders are still there, so there must have been some serious buying. Volumes up, but not all of that substantial, so that's quite interesting. But from 30 million to 36, 37 million is definitely not that bad. If you're looking for that short-term trade and you actually purchase a couple of Hecates with me on this downfall here, then is that the 20? Yeah, I definitely bought some Hecates for 29 million when they were offered for sale at that. You're making a little bit of risk. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to pull the trigger already. The Jackdaw next. That one went as low as 27 million on the sellers. It's back to 30, but unfortunately 140, 33, 19, 20. It's not set to go up like the Hecate just yet. And then here we've got the Zweppel also forming this bottom. That's probably also going to be 27 million. And now we're back at 30 million. With 346, 136, 14, 10. That's just a little bit too much again. To be able to say, alright, it's time to look for a sell opportunity for Zweppels. No, you can still pick them up for less than 30 million. If you haven't done so yet, you might want to look into that. So, except for the Hecate, you could try to sell and make a little bit of money if, like me, you bought at 29 million. For the other ones, look for that long-term trade and look maybe to still pick up a couple of them on the buy orders. It is perhaps possible. Next up, the Tech 3 ships, cruisers. Here is the Legion shooting up from that bottom. Unfortunately, I tried to pick one up at like 116. That's not working. The market overtook me a little bit in speed. Sellers back up to 135.5 million, buyers at 125 million. So here is that bottom formation where I managed to buy no Legions, but I think it's Loki and Proteus and Tengu that I did buy, or maybe it's Loki and Tengu that I bought a couple of. Here's the Loki. Unfortunately for me, it is forming a second bottom at like 120, so 110 for the buyers. Man, you should just buy this one straight right now. Let's do this. Well, I'm gonna come back here because this is not where I have most of my ISK, but this one should be gone by the time that I get here. You know what? Screw it. I hope that I got the ISK in this wallet. No, I don't. That's what's happening. All right. Well, there it is. Okay. So 126 million for the Loki, 110 million for the buyers, which is extremely cheap. This is definitely a place where you can still pick up a couple of cheap Lokis. Now, we have to hope that a possible rebalance, which is very likely considering the leaks that we saw, could bring these to higher price ranges, but who knows what's going to happen there. That remains a big gamble. Still, if you look at this chart, this is a no-brain buy territory at close to 110. Here's the Proteus next, just like the Legion, shooting back up a little bit from average price of 120 million, selling for 131. Lack of buyers is still here. You can probably still try to pick up a couple of cheap Proteus hulls. And finally we have the Tengu, after shooting up a little bit, giving ground once again. 127 for the sellers, 118 for the buyers. So being able to pick up Tech 3 ships for less than 120 million, I think is not bad, but I have to be honest, it also remains a bit of a gamble because you never know what the Tech 3 cruiser changes might mean for Tech 3 prices. So be careful. As I've said, never pour all of your ISK in a single good or anything like that. But if we look at these charts, these look like mostly very interesting places to actually try and purchase a couple, which is what I'm personally doing myself. And then finally for the extra product, 5315. I want to take a look at the faction cruisers, just out of personal interest. I know a lot of people might want to have me take a look at some advanced moon materials because of, again, possible CSM leaks in the moon mineral market, but I'm gonna do that next week. We'll take a look at the moon materials next week. Now let's take a look at the faction cruiser, see if we can spot anything happening here. Augur Navy issue slowly going up, but still staying around 50 million below average. Caracal Navy issue, this is interesting. Actually bought a couple of those at very cheap prices, going up in price here. 55 million for the sellers, 48.4 for the buyers. It's an increase in margin, and I bought, I think, for 49 million or something like that. A couple of Caracal Navy issues, which is quite interesting. I also read that there has been like a major faction warfare battle with some Caldari inclined citadels getting blown up by mercs, if I'm not mistaken, but this could show the close correlation between these Navy issue ships and faction warfare. So hopefully the Galente can crush the Caldari and increase that price to make my investment worth it. Next up, Executor Navy issue, which is a Galente one, which was at a high point. Again, if they're starting to win out a little bit, this goes back down, and so your sell opportunity for this was unfortunately over. Here is the Omen Navy issue. Very cheap omens at the moment, a bit of a shoot up right here. So again, I think Amar Warfare is doing really well at the moment, meaning cheaper Omen Navy issues. If they start to get their butts handed to them by the Minotaur, these could be good investments, but I would personally like to see it close to 40 million, considering the historical chart. Buyers are at 45, a little bit too high. Osprey Navy issue, Caldari 1, clearly a 1 year low. If you're looking to invest in some of these, that's where I would look at. Side Navy issue, which is Minotaur, probably not doing too well. Very high price point, 64 million. That's your time to sell. And look, you could also have bought these for 40 million in November, quite interestingly enough. Stabber Navy issue, Minotaur 1, selling here about average. It's hard to say what you should do here, but if this is a sign that maybe Minotaur LP is starting to come back a little bit, Minotaur Faction Warfare is doing a little bit better, then at some point the site is going to start to go down as well, and you could start to look for maybe a turnaround and thus a buy opportunity in some of these. At the moment, of course, we're looking not to buy Galente Minotaur, but you're probably looking to buy, what is it, Amar? Yeah, maybe Ogre Navy issue, Caracal Navy issue, I bought a couple of those. Omen Navy issue, maybe, and Osprey Navy issue is where I would put a buy order if I need to do that right now. And then hope, of course, for Faction Warfare to turn around. And then for the pirate faction ships, let's take a look at that. Ashimu, very cheap at the moment, 1 year low. Cinnabal, 1 year high, not bad. Currently selling for 165 million ISK. Ortrus next, 1 year high as well, quite interesting, 250 million. Alright, very nice. Do I have an Ortrus lying around somewhere that I bought, I think in the summer? Look at that. Could make me some money. I think I'll have to decide, because 50-60 million on the Ortrus might be worth it to bring it back and actually sell it. Phantasm next. That one unfortunately is not a great chart to look at. Probably a little bit average. 125 for the sellers, 120 for the buyers. Is where on the chart? Here at the lower end, a bit below average. Stradios next. Alright. After shooting up in January, coming back down a little bit, staying around average, I would say. The Gila, ooh, cheap Gilas at the moment. Oh, that's interesting. 187 for the buyers, 196 for the sellers. Look how cheap this is. Really, really cheap at the moment. If you're looking to have a Gila to fly yourself, it's or if you're skilling up to that, it's right now is a great time to buy it. We're at the 1 year low. I might actually buy 1 or 2 myself just as an investment and hope that they can go back up to like 250, something like that, for a sell opportunity. And finally the Vigilant, hesitating a little bit but still well above average. And there you go, quick look at the faction cruisers as well for this Eve Talk. Next Eve Talk, I'll look into the moon materials, see if there are any clear signs of manipulation or CSM leaks and stuff like that. But on that front, I must say that CCP has already announced the fact that they're planning a rebalancing, a changing of the moon mining materials, and I've been talking about looking at the moon material market for investment opportunities for a long time. So this may just be natural things happening in the market, investors saying, pulling the trigger, all right, if it's gonna happen, I want to buy now. I think that would actually make a lot of sense as well. Doesn't necessarily indicate any CSM leaking or anything like that. And that's going to be it for this Eve Talk, guys. Staying just below the hour. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.